Hey guys, welcome back to another one of Crow's Greenfoot lessons. I hope you're excited to learn how to create a platformer where your main player can shoot by clicking on the mouse. At the end of this video, you'll be able to learn how gravity can work in Greenfoot, and you can jump around and land on platforms. We also designed this background on our own, so you're going to be able to draw a little bit of a background and use background color. And on top of the jumping, we'll eventually learn how to not fly through the sky, but we're also going to learn how to fire projectiles, have these enemies move around back and forth and get destroyed when you're firing the projectiles at them, and be able to count how many times you want your enemy to get hit to be destroyed. So I hope you enjoy the video, and if you feel like you got something out of it, you can like, subscribe, or comment at the bottom of the page. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy it. Hey guys, today I'm going to get started on a platformer game. We'll see how far we get into it, but this is going to be an advanced Greenfoot platformer game. So I in the past have made a platformer game that was pretty beginner level and didn't really do much. And so first thing I'm going to do is increase the size of the world so we can add a little bit more to it. So we'll do 1000 by 700. Nice. Good with that. We're going to need to create a player. That is just going to be our person for now. We're going to add in an animated image eventually to get this a little bit more. Then I'm going to import from the library. Let's see. We're going to have a ground, and our ground is actually going to have a couple subclasses. We'll call it wide, and then our ground will have a tall subclass. This way we can have two different grounds that act the same but look a little bit different. This one should be a little bit taller. We can also scale some of these, but if you scale it too much, it gets really congested there. And so what I'm going to do now is set my background. Set background dot set color, a new color, and then RGB. So I'm going to have it be a little bit lighter. So I'll have it be 20, 20, and then blue can be 240. Let's make sure we have enough parentheses here. Get background, not set background. That might be the case. I messed that one up a little bit. Let's try that. There we go. Get background dot fill. Then let's see what we got here. All right, it's a little too dark of blue. Left it at blue. Here we go. Okay, so we got our blue background. We'll throw in some clouds here in a little bit, but let's see our image. Okay, so let's check what this is at. We can inspect, see the Y is at 666. Let's switch these around. Oops. $500. Here we go. Make it a little bit wider than that. Close. There's the ticket. 3. Oh yeah, that looks good. So then we can just leave it there, and since that is already in our world, we don't need to do anything to that. Check out what a tall looks like. Okay, so not quite as tall as I'd like it to be, but we can always do a constructor that we can input the height and the width we want. We can get image dot scale height Okay, that way anytime we enter a wall in, it'll ask how tall do we want it. If we leave it 1, 1, it will be 1 pixel by 1 pixel. So this, we can literally make it as tall as we want. And it should have been X and Y value. I don't know why I put height first. I'll have to switch that. But just to test, we want it 50 wide, not height, but wide, and 200 tall. When I plug this in, there we go. That's what we got. So now you can build your world how you want it. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a few things going on here. So eventually I'd like to have a scrolling background. So what we can do here is add false. And this is the bounds, if the world is bounded or not, if there are boundaries to the world. So as of now, our world constructor has a width, a height, and a cell size. This one up here. But what we've done now is added a Boolean value of whether it's bounded or not, and we've set it as not. So that way, if I added in another wall over here, I could move it, and I could even put it in at -693. So that's what that would do if we left it there, but I'm going to go ahead and just leave it so it is unbounded. But let's go ahead and throw our player in there now. Oh no, now our player is the same color as the sky. So eventually we're going to switch this up, but just so we can view it, we can switch them out with a green person. Okay, now, so what our goal here is to have our player have a vertical speed, and so we will do int v speed equals 0, and we're going to have an acceleration equals 0. And so the way our player public void fall, so we're going to have our player fall. So we got our fall. So we're going to set our location, because we're not moving in a rotational way, like we're not turning and rotating, we're jumping up and down. So we're going to just get the X value, but we're going to get the Y value, and that's what's really going to change. And so our Y value will change based off of V speed. And our V speed will change if we aren't touching the ground. So public void check falling. And here, if we are not touching ground.class, we will change this to a Boolean value. We will return true. So we should be falling. Check falling should be true. Else, return false. Okay, and so now, if check falling is true, that is a method. We are going to set our location, and we are going to go down, which will add to our V speed. But right now our V speed is 0, so we need to have a way of changing our V speed. So that actually is why we always want to be adding V speed, and so that is why we're not going to return true. That is my fault. We are instead going to have V speed plus plus, and then there's not going to be any else. Oh no, we will have an else. Else V speed equals 0, and we will always have the ability to fall. Now, we will only actually fall, if we are not touching the ground, because our V speed will be going down. But if we are touching the ground, our V speed will go to 0. Okay, so we put that in the act method. Fall. check falling first, fall second. Okay, so as you can see here, go faster and faster, and once it's touching, it will stop. Okay, and then we need to have our jump. So public void jump. If Greenfoot.isKey down space, we will have our v speed equals -12, and that should have us jump. So I'm going to go ahead and add a player at player 50 for the X and 500 for the Y. They can be suspended in air just to prove right from the start that it will fall. Now if I push space down, if it's in the act method first, let's see if we do jump first and change it before we check for falling, maybe it will actually jump for us. I believe the issue we have here is that, see, we can jump before, but once we hit, we're stuck in it. So we need to void land on top of the ground, and that will say if is touching ground.class, we want to be closer to the top. Set location, get Y. Should I try to have it suspended in there? Will that work? It's a test you can have. So if that's in the act method, that'll probably have us bouncing around. But something that we can check here. Okay. So then we land, but we go back up to the top. So ideally, that's kind of what we want to do. We'll leave it there for now, but what we'd like to do is just set it once and reset it in relation to the ground, as opposed to touching the ground and bouncing off of the ground back and forth, back and forth. So, so if it's not touching the ground, what if we did an else if here? Else if it is touching the ground, and we can then also set our v speed to 0. Okay, essentially does the same thing. So now, since it does the same thing there, we can just, we'll take that out. Okay, now I want my move around. Oopsies. Boy, move around. We will, if Greenfoot.isKey down, right, we're going to set our location to our X value. Right would be further from the 0 X value, so plus speed, I'm going to need a variable in case I ever want to change that and speed it up. So I'll my speed be 5. Then if Greenfoot.isKey down left. Oh jeez. And shift There we go. Set location, get x minus 5, which is speed, get y, close parentheses. Okay, then move around in there. Alright, so now we got a guy that can jump, and we'll fix him falling through the ground a little bit later, but let's see. Could build it a little bit higher, jump up. Different platforms, depends on how you want to make the game. So we're now going to add in our projectile, and I'm actually going to scale these down quite a bit. Public projectile. We are going to get image dot scale and 30 by 30. Let's see what that looks like. Should make them quite a bit bigger. Yeah, that'll be perfect. So then we have in our player class, we're going to want to public void fire projectile. So if Greenfoot dot a mouse clicked, so if I can remember, in the Greenfoot class, there is a mouse clicked and a mouse pressed. Mouse clicked is if it's been released. Mouse pressed, so I'm going to do mouse pressed. And it doesn't have to hit anything, just if it's clicked at all. We are going to get world dot add object new projectile, and we are going to locate it at get x, get y for now. Just the x and y value. Throw this in the act method. Fire projectile. Make sure they're named correctly. Alright, so if I move around, my projectiles are getting added in. That's good. That's a good start. Now I'm going to have my projectiles, once they get added into the world, turn to mouse. So I want them to, when I click, I want them to go towards the mouse. So I want to fire towards the mouse so I can aim and make this a game where I aim at the players and aim at the enemies and fire at them. Okay, right now they're just sitting there stagnant. So in my projectile, I'm going to say set location Greenfoot dot get mouse info dot get x of the mouse info. Greenfoot dot get mouse info dot get y, but that will just get it to move wherever my mouse is on the screen. So if I click it in, it'll just follow it. Okay, we don't want that. And then there's an error if it goes off the screen. So we don't want that at all. We want for it to just turn towards. So instead of set location, I need a turn towards. And in order for us to see it, we need for this to move speed, and the speed for the projectile will equal 10. So if you want it to act like that, that's how you make it work. Okay, it's not exactly what we want, but so we just want the projectile to do that one time. we're going to have the player be able to access our projectile. So projectile equals new projectile. So what this has done is made a reference to one object of projectile. The new means we're going to have one instance of the class projectile that we created, and we're going to have one. The one that we're talking about is going to be used just once. That's the one we're going to be referencing. So when I do projectile, after it gets added in, I wonder if I can, just to test, I'm doing a lot of testing here too. Projectile dot churn towards Greenfoot dot mouse. Let's just test 0, 0. So it should go to the upper left corner when we fire our projectile. Yep, good. Alright, so that means we can go back in and we can do that same greenfoot.mouseinfo. This will give us there we go, paste. So hopefully that'll only do it one time, only when it's clicked. Okay, so but that's just having a new one every time. So we're going to move this from being used within the entire class. Let's try if we just created it within the if statement. So whenever it's pressed, we create a new projectile, name projectile1. Oh baby, now we got it. Now we're in business. Okay, so now we're able to fire, move around. Now what if I'm outside the screen? Is there an error? What happened there? Alright, I think I fell off the ledge. Okay. Okay, now since it will only do it when it's clicked, we are able to, and you're able to, since it's within this if statement, every time it's clicked, it's creating a new reference. And so that allows us to create multiple, and it only turns towards it one time, the mouse, and we can keep going from there. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to make a little level right here. And so since the size of the world is 1,000 right now, if I increase this to about 3,000, that makes it a lot bigger. But we are able to take that and we can build on it, and then since it is false, since the bounds are false, if we save that and locate them where we want, whoops, I can place the ground in here and create an entire level, and then from that you are able to make it back to the smaller size, and then if we have the world scroll, it will scroll with us and we will be able to make a full level, and I'll show you guys how to do that as we go. So first things first, we're going to need to create our level. So this is already set up quite nicely. I need to switch the height and the width here. Doesn't change anything, it just changes the names of them. And when you get asked, let's do 200 by 100. I like that. 200 50 by 50. Alright, so now that we have our level here, what's nice is that we've created our game in a way that if you land on any of these, since it is a superclass, it'll work the same way. Now the problem is, if you land on the side of it, it'll work like an elevator and it will shoot you up. Or if you land on the bottom of it, it'll shoot you up. So instead of doing is touching, we're gonna have to change that, but I don't think we're ready for that yet. We'll do that in some of the more final touches. Let's try to build our game first, a little bit more in depth. And so next we need to have an enemy class. Whoops, caps lock. And so this enemy class, I think a snake will work well. And so our snake is going to need to be able to face both directions, and I just feel like it's better off having it starting facing towards you. And so I'm going to public enemy, create a constructor that will mirror horizontally, and that is under the image class. So if we get image, throw in an enemy, they will be mirrored facing us to the left. Within that, our enemies just need to move. How are they going to move around? So we want our enemies set location, get X plus speed, no comma, and get Y, and they're just going to bounce left and right. So move around. And we need a speed for them, int speed. Well, our projectiles are 10, our person moves at 5. I think our enemies should move a little bit slower than the person. So now if we add in an enemy, they will face. If we run, oops, they'll move backwards away from the X is 0. So we want to start them moving towards. And there's a couple different ways we can do this once we get going. We can put them on a timer and then say if count equals 2 seconds, which would be like 120, greater than 120, we can mirror them horizontally, have them speed go the other, speed equal negative speed. And so -3 would equal +3, moving them back the other way. So let's start off doing it like that. So we are going to say if, we're going to have our count first, int count equals 0, start off, and our count equal ++. If count is less than 120, we're going to set location to plus speed, else we are going to have speed equal negative speed, so we'll flip directions, and then we will also we'll change up our speed, and we will mirror horizontally one more time. So we will get image dot mirror horizontally. And this will switch us the way we're looking, and then we're going to have our count equals 0, so that should send us back up to the top of the act method loop. and count should start over at 0, and count will be less than 120. And the set location, we'll set the location of speed over and over and over again, and count will go up, but it'll go back to 0 once it hits 120. So every 2 seconds. So let's just see how that looks. Hopefully it will just mirror once and it'll just flip around and go the other way after 2 seconds. Okay, so that's good. That's what we're looking for. If our enemy, we might want to switch it up to 60. You could also check if it's touching, and later on when we change our player, we'll check to make sure that he's at the top of a platform, and then if he's at the bottom left or right, we'll just make sure he doesn't go through like it's a wall. So 1 second is just about perfect for this size. So that looks pretty great. So let's go ahead and just leave it at that for now, and then we can change that up later if we'd like. So we'll have 1, 2, 3 enemies. We'll go ahead and save the world now. Hopefully that doesn't throw anything off over here. Nope, looking good. Okay, then we'll go into our enemy and say public void hit by projectile. We'll say they have to get hit 3 times. So int health equals 3. We can say if is touching projectile class. We can have our health minus minus, and that'll just decrement it down by 1. But this, remember, it goes 60 frames per second, so that would actually, every frame that it's touching would count the health down, so that would actually be a problem here. So we're going to say boolean hit by projectile, and starting off, that will obviously be false. So this also needs to be and operand operator hit by projectile must be false. In order to get hit by projectile has to be false. And then we need a switch hit by projectile equal to true. And then else if you are not touching projectile.class, no matter what, if you're not touching it, hit by projectile should switch back to false. Alright, then separate from that, if health is less than somehow or equal to 0, we are going to get world.remove object this. So we're going to remove this instance of our enemy from the world, not the entire class, but one instance. So this should say hit by projectile method. And we also have hit by projectile boolean. Is that confusing? Let's just make it hit projectile. Then we can switch this to hit projectile. Hopefully that clears things up, doesn't make it more confusing to you. Make sure you understand that this is the boolean. The method is where everything else is. Okay. So now, see how my firing is. 1, hopefully 2, oh come on, 3, boom, nice. Oh, come on. Boom. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, okay, so it's not, oh, alright, let's try that again. So why is this not registering? I think that'll register as 1. Yeah. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to have our projectile get removed. So right now, when we rapid fire, it's reading it as that's just one bullet because it's always getting hit. It never has a chance to not be touching it anymore. So what we need to do is have it so quick that we need to remove this projectile, because when we remove it, that will give it at least one frame to switch from false, like it's not getting touched, to it being touched, back to not being touched, and then it being touched. So if we have the projectiles get removed, in that split second that the projectile hits it, it will get removed, and that'll give it a chance to be switched off, the boolean to go to false. Okay, so in our projectile, we need to say if is touching enemy.class, we are going to get world.remove object this. Okay, so now should remove it. Oh, still too fast? Ah, no, I know what it is. It's removing the projectile before it removes or counts down the enemy health. Okay, and so what we need to make sure that we do is that we're going to have to do it within our enemy class. So right now our projectile gets added in, and so that code will happen first. That automatically puts it as the first thing that happens, and so our projectile will touch the enemy and remove itself before anything else happens. So we need to go into our enemy, and we need to, if it's hit by projectile, we're going to need to change, instead of accessing the entire class on if it's touching the projectile, we are going to check and look and see if a projectile, one object, not the entire class, but one instance of projectile is intersecting our enemy. And so we are going to need to do actor, declare that we have an actor that we're about to look for, one instance of actor, and it could be any actor, but it's going to be our projectile. And then it's going to equal get one intersecting object, and it's going to be of the projectile class that we're expecting to be intersecting us. And then if the projectile that we are expecting to be intersecting the enemy does not equal nothing or is equal to something, there shouldn't be a space there, then we are going to hit projectile and remove, do our get world.remove object. Instead of this, we can do one object of the projectile that we just read was hitting us. Okay, so let's try that out. Go back into our projectile, get rid of this code, and let's see what this does for us. So this hopefully will remove it. Oh yeah, so that'll work great for us. So now we'll know, boom, 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 3 shots, boom, boom, boom. Awesome. That's all we're going to be doing today. Please don't forget to like, subscribe if you enjoyed watching the video, and leave a comment if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.